I have met Kim Jong Un in Panmunjom on the South Korean side for the second time. And we could still remember that on April 27th, I have met Kim Jong Un for the first time in Panmunjom. And in the last summit, we have decided to meet at any time as we require in order to reach more consensus on some key issues. Yesterday afternoon, Chairman Kim told me that he would want to meet us, and I willingly accepted it. And for a long time, I have always been exploring for a way out for the Korean Peninsula, and I believe that only when the two top leaders could have candid discussion can we resolve this issue. Such a pursuit has been reflected in our Panmunjom Declaration. On April 27th, our Panmunjom Declaration was launched and published, and yesterday afternoon during the second summit, it is also of historic significance. ROK and DPRK must meet on a frequent basis. That is my pursuit. So, distinguished guests, when the DPRK and US summit is about to begin, ROK has been meeting with DPRK leaders on a frequent basis, which I believe will pave the way for this summit on June the 12th between DPRK and the US. And also, we believe that if Kim Jong Un could realize denuclearization in Korean Peninsula, this would be contributing to the economic and social development in DPRK. And I discovered that Kim Jong Un and President Trump are also sincere in terms of pushing forward such a US DPRK summit. So I believe they should have bilateral cooperation instead of conflicts and confrontation. So such a dialogue would pave the way for the formal summit. And Mr. Kim agreed with me about this idea. Chairman Kim, since the launching of the Panmunjom Declaration, has, for a second time, done some due contribution with tangible actions to the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. And also for the US DPRK summit, we have been working hard on building a long-term and permanent peace regime. ROK and DPRK, for the matter of the convening of US DPRK summit on June the 12th, will need to cooperate and work towards the same direction. We have reached a consensus on that. At the same time, to implement the Panmunjom Declaration in a tangible and constructive way, we have held a series of dialogues and talks, and we decided to hold a high-level summit again on June the 1st, and also we will hold the other series of talks at an early date. And both ROK and DPRK believe that the second meeting is of historic significance as well, and also in the future times, as long as we need it, we could keep such contact. So, if we look back, for a long time, the Korean Peninsula has been blanketed in terror and stress and tension, and such an atmosphere has been penetrating into the daily lives of our civilians. So I believe that is why the Korean Peninsula has not been enjoying peace, rather it's been suffering from separation. And now we are going to change the course. We would build the Panmunjom to be a platform of peace and prosperity. DPRK has abandoned its nuclear test, and that's just a beginning. Even though it's only a step forward, but it's of great significance. And we're going to take steps by steps to march forward in order to realize our destination. And we're going to explore actively for a way of peaceful development in the Korean Peninsula, and we still have a long way to go. As the President of South Korea, I'm gonna carry on my shoulder the pursuits of our people and walk on that path in order to have success and realize our targets. And I welcome your support from everyone. Thank you. Now let's start the Q&A session. If you have any questions, please raise your hand.
예, 안녕하십니까. 연합뉴스 서혜림 기자입니다. 4.27 정상회담 이후에 한 달 만에
Good morning, President.
다시 정상회담을 하신 건데요.
I come from United News. After 1 month since the first meeting in April, now we are having the second talks. What is the background of this second meeting? And I would also want to know the significance of yesterday's meeting. On April the 27th, we have successfully signed the Panmunjom Declaration. And as we know, according to the schedule, we're going to have the DPRK-US summit on June the 12th. During this time, we surely bumped into certain obstacles and difficulties, but to rise up to these obstacles and conflicts, we have done a lot of efforts. We also aim at truly implementing the contents and terms of the Panmunjom Declaration, and I believe that is critically important. That's why I have had a teleconference with Kim Jong Un, and during such a dialogue, Kim Jong Un invited me to have the second meeting on the North Korean side, and he said that we shouldn't just stop at this teleconference. Instead, we shall meet in person, and I totally agreed. That's why we held the second summit. And against that background, we were really unable to inform you of this second meeting beforehand, so I hope you could understand. I come from KBS. In your briefing, Mr. President, you mentioned that the US and DPRK summit must go towards the right direction, and DPRK will have denuclearization. So my question is, for those two goals, during the DPRK and US summit, what are these objective significance in the entire summit? Will there be any change? Chairman Kim Jong Un has specified that he is gonna undertake the cause of denuclearization in the Korean Peninsula. So if you want me to talk about the uncertainties and changes, I believe that uncertainty may be any potential actions on the part of DPRK about denuclearization. And also that uncertainty lies in whether the US could offer some guarantee measures. And of course, Kim Jong Un is quite concerned about that support. During the ROK and DPRK summit, and also during the dialogue between DPRK and US, President Trump said he is more than happy to end such a confrontation in the Korean Peninsula, and he's going to offer even some financial support to the denuclearization. So I believe that if the US and DPRK could keep conveying such a positive messages and reaching consensus, they will have fruitful results, and I would be more than happy to play as a role of a bridge between the two sides. And whether the US DPRK summit to be held on June the 12th will be convened as has been scheduled. Even though we have certain uncertainties, at least we are seeing very strong willingness on both sides to keep it going.
따라서 6월 12일 북미 정상회담이 차질없이 열릴 것인가 또 성공할 것인가가 달려 있다고.
And we're really paying attention and looking forward to the summit on June the 12th. And we're already carrying out a serious preparatory works. I want to highlight the point that the US and the DPRK must be very clear about each other's demands and pursuits and accommodate each other's interests and concerns. If they can manage it, then I believe the summit will surely be convened as has been scheduled.
서울신문 이밀령입니다.
I come from Seoul News. Just now, President Moon Jae-in mentioned that Chairman Kim Jong Un has a strong willingness in pushing forward denuclearization. I want to know, how did you come to that conclusion? And another question is, during yesterday's meeting with Kim Jong Un, have you two ever talked about the detailed measures to achieve denuclearization? For that question, I have answered on many occasions, actually, and to be honest, the US and DPRK have held several rounds of talks. So I don't think I need to keep giving you the detailed answers for another time. And with the willingness on both sides to keep forward such a denuclearization, as to the detailed measures and the procedures, we need to talk more and negotiate over the detailed measures. But of course, it's not going to be a very rosy picture. And I think that is what the US and DPRK need to talk about. That's not what I can decide. Morning, I come from NBC from the US. Thank you for your briefing.
목소리를 좀 크게 좀 해주십시오.
물론 여러 차례
Could you speak louder?
비핵화에 대해서 설명을 하셨다고 하는데 사실 그 CVID를 북한이
Just now, the denuclearization has been mentioned for a couple of times. My concern is whether the North Korea has accepted such a concept, and I want to know whether it means CVID. And another question is whether President Trump has played a very positive role to yesterday's meeting between you and Kim Jong Un.
어떤 의중이나 이런 거를 좀 참고를 하시고 만나실 수 있는 그 기회가 됐었는지 그게 궁금하고요. 그리고
another question is, in your meeting yesterday with Kim Jong Un, is there any influential factor from President Trump for that meeting?
아직 전화 통화를 안 하셨는데 전화는 안 하고 미팅만 하시는데 사실 전화로 3자 대화도 컨퍼런스도 할 수 있는데 그런 것도 한번 생각을 해보시는지 그게 왜 안 되고 있는지.
Actually, I think if you could have such calls between you guys, you could have a three-party talks over the phones with the U.S. involved.
예, 질문을 굉장히 많이 해주셔가지고요.
Sorry for so many questions.
첫 번째 질문은 이제 김정은 위원장이 어제 대화에서 CVID에 대해서 명확하게.
I have to summarize the questions again. The first question is whether Kim Jong Un has talked explicitly about the concept of CVID, and I hope to get your answer. Firstly, I have emphasized on many occasions for the matter of CVID, I could not give you a very definite answer. All I could say is DPRK has clearly shown their decision to carry out denuclearization, but as to the actual methods and measures, we have to keep talking over that issue. And also, I am convinced that in the many talks to be carried out, we are going to keep having talks about that issue of CVID. And what's your second question? President Trump said it is highly possible that such a June 12 summit between U.S. and DPRK will be convened as scheduled. So will this decision have any influence over your meeting yesterday with Kim Jong Un? All the efforts I have made are not just to improve the relationship between ROK and DPRK, but also meant to facilitate the convening of the U.S. DPRK summit on June the 12th. And to that end, I will keep taking active actions to make it happen. And with Kim Jong Un and President Trump, I have already had some discussions. But as to the contents of such discussions, I have already briefed you in the beginning. Last question, please. President Moon Jae-in and Chairman Kim Jong Un and President Trump, between you three, could you have a three-party talks over the phones?
예, 이게 이제 한라인 통화라는 것이 맞으면 즉각
Such a
전화를 받을 수
hotline
있는
discussion over the phone
그런
between the heads of
통신
states
이게 맞으면 구축이 되어야 합니다. 아시는 바와 같이
need
남북
several
간에
preconditions, of course. For example, hardware support, like the equipment,
북미 간에도 그런
and
이렇게 구축
also between DPRK and the U.S. I think in the future they will make efforts to build such a hotline between the two. And just now, you've mentioned about such talks over the phone from three sides. I have to say it takes time. So that's what I think. I think if the U.S. DPRK discussion on June the 12th could be staged as scheduled, the so-called three-party talks over the phone is highly possible in the future.
이상으로 우리 일문일답을 모두 마치시고 대통령께서
That's the end of the Q&A session.